Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. We are on episode number 115. 115. And we are glad you're joining us. Hey, we are a bunch of haters talking about some hating things today. It's going to be I'm just kidding. Actually, we're actually a bunch of Christians who work at a church, and we are just glad you're watching with us. But we'll talk a lot about that concept today. But if you are joining us for the first time, hopefully you don't hate us. But we're just glad you're joining with us, and we pray that you would be blessed by the conversations.
I don't mind you hate watching.
You can hate watch? Okay, hate watch.
And the reason Greg's going down this road is because the discussion on the sermon is about hate. And,
right.
And so we did get a lot of comments on that kind of pigeonholed us as all Christians are haters.
Well, and that's the assumption that we're going to be attacking today. But as we chase down the truth wherever it runs, remember, I got to look at it when I say that. But we're glad that you are joining with us. And my name is Greg Harris, and I'm the senior pastor here at Olive Branch Community Church and the foremost preacher of hate. And so we're just glad that you're jumping in with us as we're going to make fun of this as far as we can. But anyway, my co-haters are...
Hello, my name is Stephen Oldham. If you're hating us on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. Especially after you've hated and made a comment, please make sure you subscribe. Even if you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down. Let me know what you liked or didn't like. I'd be interested to know. But also follow us. Let us know. Enter into the conversation. We'd love to hear your insight. And that goes for the audio.
And your love. We'd love to have your love.
And we do have a lot of people that care about us as well. So thank you for your wonderful comments online and some of the sweet things that you're trying to say.
But if you hate us and you really want to let us know, Brent, how do they get a hold of us?
Well, you know what? You can send your comments and your hate mail to Rabbit Trail at obcc.church. But more than those, we would appreciate if you had a question. If you had a question, want some clarification on something, or just had a theological something that's hard to wrap your head around,
or some theology that you hate.
Yes. What did I say?
I don't
theological? Know. I don't know.
A theological.
I don't know. I am tired. So yeah, if you have any questions, send it to us at rabbittrail@obcc.church. We would love to spend time discussing those questions.
And we might even hate it.
And we do have a question, or at least a comment, but and a question today too. So that's exciting.
We got a question.
I think it was 2 questions. So we'll get to that at the end of the show. So stay tuned to that. But we do start off the shows lately with
the thing I hate
jokes,
the most,
with horrible jokes. And so,
Brent and his
I got a
jokes.
trifecta of horrible jokes. So, what kind of car did Jesus drive?
I know, but I'm just say I don't know.
No, if you know, throw it out there.
Well, an Accord.
No.
Oh, it's not that one.
No,
okay.
that was the Apostles.
The Apostles were all
They're all in one
accord.
accord.
Okay. Well,
I don't even have that one down.
Ooh.
So I got a fourfecta of car jokes.
Okay.
So, I don't know. The car that Jesus liked to drive was a Chrysler. What kind of cars do evangelists like to drive?
I don't know.
Convertibles.
Ooh,
Convertibles. And what is a car salesman's favorite passage of Scripture?
I don't know.
And obviously, it's the Great Commission.
Oh,
bada bing,
boom,
bada
boom,
boom,
boom, boom, boom.
So
Brent
there you go.
And his terrible
3 car
jokes.
terrible jokes with a bonus 4th joke.
Yeah, go car jokes.
Credit Greg for that.
This is our car show.
Yes.
For all of you who don't like the other one. So.
Yes. Father's Day's coming up in a little while, so I should have waited and done them then. But
Father's Day jokes.
Yeah.
There's a couple of those
dad jokes.
Car shows are big for dads.
Jesus dad jokes.
They're having one in Temecula. Not too soon.
So again, one of the reasons we got off to a really weird and rocky start was because we are discussing the
Assumptions Gone Viral
sermon series called Assumptions Gone Viral, and It's About Hate was the title of this one. And so again, just start off with some of the things you said in the sermon. You were talking about when man sinned, he let evil in, and doing so, he brought in hate. So when man let in evil, he brought in hate. So right off the bat, can a man be evil? Can mankind be evil, or is evil just an act?
So I think that first of all, the important part was that my argument was kind of like, what's the origin of hate? And because these weird verses where God tells us we got to hate evil, right? So when you hate evil, then you got to be able to, then when evil showed up, that's the origin of it. If there was no evil in the world, there wouldn't be any hate in the world. There would be no need for that aversion and pushing away of evil. So, so can a human be evil? Well, I mean, I have to say yes, because the scripture actually calls humans evil multiple times. So it's not like it's something I can just say, well, no, because humans can, that just because a human is evil, I think is important, or bad. I think it's important to note that doesn't take away the image of God from that person. And in fact, the image of God comes before the evil, like in the story, right? So I always want to remember there's a story narrative: creation, fall, redemption, consummation. It's this kind of fourfold grand story. It's a narrative, a meta-narrative of the Bible. And so when we dive into that thought, we remember that you start with humanity as the image of God, and then we commit evil. And I didn't do this illustration. I wish I had. Well, maybe not. I'm glad I didn't bring it up here. And what I like, there's a lot of conversation about what is evil in the philosophical realm. And
this is why you should listen to the podcast, because you get the bonus material.
Whether you like it or not. Yeah. Wait. Anyway, and so the picture that like Augustine would use is like the shadow. It's the deprivation of light. So that's what evil is. It's when light it's less good.
The absence of light.
The absence of the good, right? There's others who argue, no, it's more like a wound. Like good is something that evil can only exist sitting in. And I like that illustration a little better, because like when I think about the words sin, meaning missing the mark, and then you get to the word wicked or iniquity, which is twisted. And then you get to the last one, transgression, which is to purposely break trust with somebody. All of these things have to have the good before the bad. You have to have the target to miss the target. You have to have the thing to be twisted. You have to have the trust to break. So it requires good. And that's why I think human beings always feel like they make a good decision, regardless of the fact that dopamine kicks all whatever. We all feel like we do the good, and we're not evil. However, if you think about it, well, the illustration I was going to use is take the rope, and imagine I'm holding it between my two hands, and you can imagine as you twist that rope, it begins to twist in on itself. And there's a point at which if you've ever had a hose or you've ever had a rope and twisting up and it gets tangled and so knotted from its being twisted. And
Christmas lights.
Oh, gosh. Christmas lights. Well, it's not Christmas.
I know.
You can't do that.
Okay.
But it takes them that long to unwrap them.
I know. It's we're still unwrapping our Christmas lights. But I think that's important to think of it that way, because I think there's a point at which you get so bound up, you're unusable. Now you're evil. Right? One twist, you're... 2 twists, 3 twists. How many twists does it take to get to the center of a twisted Tootsie Pop? 1, 2, 3.
3.
But yeah, so I don't know. I can't tell you. But I think that, like, I agree, Stephen, like you had mentioned, the idea that it really kind of happens when it becomes habit, right?
Yeah, if you're talking about hate, right? We're talking about evil is to me a whole different category, as a bigger category, I guess. But if you're talking about when does someone...
I think evil and hate go together, because you got to hate
do.
evil. So the question is then, can you hate an evil person?
Can you hate an evil person?
But are there evil people? So that's the first question. Are there evil
people? Okay. So yes, I do think that if you do enough of a repetitive action, intent and will in your life to the point where it is a part of what you do as a motive, and as how you operate, then yes, you are that thing. So the problem is we're too quick to identify that in a person. So, oftentimes the first time someone lies, they're always a liar. They never tell the truth. They hurt me, and so therefore I'm lashing back, because no one should ever violate, hurt me, or do anything that I don't like. So everyone is my enemy right off the bat. But so that's why the Bible talks a lot about grace and a lot about giving people the benefit of the doubt, because all of us in a moment, or because we all are sinners, are capable of sinning I should say. We all have the propensity to do those things, but it becomes who you are when you do it repetitively, and it is now identified with what you do as a person. So if I'm known for lying, or I lie habitually, or I don't care about the truth, or I have a flagrant disregard for other people, then that is who I am, and that's what I'm telling other people I'm willing to do. And yeah, I would call you that. So if you are a thief that continues to steal and you live that way, and that's a part of what you are, then yeah, you're a thief. And this is what judges do. There are certain things I do think, like as we talked about covenants, that once you say I will not be this thing, and you violate that, the same is true, because you're going back on your word, and you made a public statement that you wouldn't go back on it. So then I would also consider you to be that as well.
So it's interesting because there's different terms, right? There's points where it says they're evil men, like redeem me from evil men. The Bible tends to use the term evil doers more than it uses
than evil people.
Than like evil people. Yeah. Evil doers is a very New Testament term, but evil people, evil ones, evil one is typically
the devil,
right?
Or the demonic realm.
But so here's the question, like, that I want to ask. So because it kind of goes in hand, like if you can have people who are evil, are there people who are unredeemable?
Yeah, I don't think you would. I don't know if I would feel comfortable.
I'm giving a trick question.
Yeah, no, and you can answer your own question, but I'll give it a shot. I don't think as a Christian we're capable of understanding when someone reaches the point at which I'm not supposed to see if they're redeemable. I judge people by what they're doing in their actions, right? There's safety, there's concerns, there's certain judgments I have to make given the situation, but I'm always probably going to look for an opportunity for them to repent of whatever they did. That has nothing to do with forgiving them of the consequences of what they did, but everything to do with thinking that they have an opportunity to before they die, to come to the confession of knowing Christ as their Lord and Savior and repent of their sins. So I'm always, as a Christian, need to have the opportunity to look for that opportunity, but I don't do that like a fool. A lot of people think that, like, well, that means that I forgive you, and I don't understand that you might have the propensity to harm me or something like that. You don't go blindly into that situation, but I do think that there's always needs to be room for that in the heart of a Christian, because until you die, there's still an opportunity for God to turn things around, but it would be an act of God, and it would be an act of contrition, but it doesn't mean devoid of consequences.
Now, I mean, part of this whole podcast is you've got two people here with severe ADD and one without. So it is like a rabbit trail within a rabbit trail all the time. So you just asked that question: can somebody be irredeemable or unredeemable? And so, like, one of the things that popped into my head is, it talks about sin and the sin that leads to death. So if you're committing sin that leads to death, does that mean that it's unredeemable at that point?
I don't really.
I think that's spiritual.
So there are different debates out there. Like in the Catholics would equate that with the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. There's others, I believe. I mean, I
have to look at a verse, but are you talking about
like 1 John,
the spiritual death?
No, 1 John chapter 6. 5, sorry, because there's no chapter 6. Blah, blah, blah. Woohoo. Yeah, I'm the pastor.
There is now.
I really know. Yeah, I just made it up. First hesitations. And there's a section here that says, basically, he's asking them to pray for those who've sinned. I write these things, you believe in the name of the God that you know have eternal life, and this is the confidence we have towards him, that if we ask anything according to him, here's us. If anyone sees his brother committing a sin not leading to death, he shall ask, and God will give him life to those who commit sins that do not lead to death. There is sin that leads to death. I do not say that one should pray for that. All wrongdoing is sin, but there is sin that does not lead to death. And so people have debated over this passage. It's kind of a complicated one. I have to study it a little bit more to get back up to speed. But really, the situation seems to be either, yes, this is the sin that is unpardonable, which would be that a hardened heart so desperately seeking an excuse to not believe in God, when God would do something and in your face, calling you to see him, like casting out a demon, and Jesus is doing it, and you go, nah, God, that's a demon who casts out a demon. Like, that would be a sin so great against God that there's just no turning you back. And not even the Spirit of God can bring you back, because the work he's trying to work on you, you're calling evil. That's a pretty hardened heart.
So I would say these conditions exist. I just don't know if I have the propensity to tell when that is. That's
Right.
what I would say.
Yeah, and that's where I go with Paul, where he's talking about this. He says, and thanks to Tim Keller out there, who
Passed away.
God bless him, who is blessing him. But he talks about this idea in 1 Corinthians I wasn't aware of, but he writes this great little book called the Blessing of Blessed Self-Forgetfulness or something like that.
He's got lots of great little books.
And it's a little book. He says, this is how one should regard us. This is from Paul in 1 Corinthians 4. This is how one should regard us, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. But with me, it's a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by any human court. In fact, I don't even judge myself. For I'm not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted. It's the Lord who judges me. Therefore, do not pronounce judgment before the Lord comes, who will bring to light the things now hidden in darkness and will disclose the purposes of the heart. Then each one will receive his commendation from God. There's this picture then. It's like, who are you to judge things before they're up? And so this to me is like twofold. I asked like that fun question of like, hey, are there unredeemable people? And the answer is actually yes. There are unredeemable people. They died. They're the people who didn't repent and receive Christ are dead, and they're unredeemable. They're done. They've had the opportunity and it's not coming. So there are unredeemable people. And it kind of equates that question about evil. Like, can you be evil? And I go like, well, I think that you really know somebody is fully and finally evil when they've died. There's no changing it from there. There's no repenting. There's no transformation. And don't forget that all humanity is considered evil ultimately. So that's the other critical thing, is that in light of God's perspective, we're all sinners.
I guess the thing I'd like to say, though, is someone doesn't get to that condition accidentally, typically. You get to the point where you're a reprobate that never has any need or desire to ever change and won't change. That took some work. That's not a thing that you get to just by, as far as like that state without a willful act, which I think is different than what you're talking about in John, when it's like all of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And so therefore that sin is what's keeping us spiritually dead. And all of us need to be that way connected. But then there's the people who actually prefer evil, know what they're doing, know who God is, and pursue that goal. And I think that's a different category.
All right. So one more rabbit trail question. All right. So Paula right there is saying, I'm not going to cast judgment on myself, until the Lord judges me, because, that's the judgment, right? So in that sense too, when it comes to court of law and judgment falling upon somebody, there is guilty or not guilty. So in the sense that there is no judgment till the Lord judges, what about salvation? The scriptures talk about us being declared righteous and holy and all that stuff, and that is before the judgment of Christ, right? So when it comes to people saying, you can lose your salvation or whatever, do you really have salvation until that judgment falls?
Well, of course. I mean, the difference is that your salvation is based on the promises of God. Now, like
in your faith,
yeah,
in those promises,
and the I mean, that I trust God, and that's really. I mean, I can't. When it's truly a belief, I love this. I can't not believe it. It's like I can't change my belief when it's a real belief. It's not. I have no will to change my belief at that point, because it's like trying to tell you, believe there's elephants in the room. It's like I can't make myself believe something that
you can choose to be disloyal, though.
Right. That's a different thing. And I think that's
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Is the disloyalty, though, in this case, he is really discussing this whole thing about being whether or not he's going to even, it's not like he's saying, I'm not looking at, hey, did I sin or not? He's just like, look, I'm not going to sit around and judge the work I've done. I'm not going to sit around and determine whether I've done a great job or a poor job. Like, that's up to the Lord. I don't care what you people think. throw me in jail, do what you're going to do to me because you think I was doing something wrong. Like God's because he has been judged many times in courts. And you've pointed out, Stephen, just how odd Paul is sitting in a court. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like he looks at it as an opportunity. So he's like, oh, good, you're here. And he's talking to Herod, who's trying to kill me. He's like, oh, I have this opportunity to bring you to the Lord. And they're like, wait a minute.
to a jailer. Now you can't get away.
I'm free. You put me in chains. You can't lock me up, though.
It's almost like the more the world persecutes him for the wrong reason, the more he feels like that's an opportunity to point out the injustices and who God is. And he thinks of it as two courts, this court and the court of heaven. And in the court of heaven, he's been adjudicated. And so he doesn't feel any fear of the court that's false. And so he looks at this as, well, while you're doing bad to me, I'm going to do good to you to show you what sin is all about. And he thinks of it as an opportunity. Crazy, but because to me, I'd be worried about my family and all my livelihood and everything. And he thinks, well, if this is what God wants to bring glory, I'm going to use it as an opportunity. But I think that's hard to get to a point where you actually do feel like the court of heaven is more what you're concerned about than any other thing that happens to you. That is a different level that we should all try to attain, because I do think Paul had friends and loved ones, and he's like, if I live, that live is Christ, to die is gain, and I really believe that.
Yeah, and I think when you bring it back to this whole question of are there evil people, I think that we want to remember also that Jesus even called us evil over and over again. Jesus was not afraid to call us evil.
Yeah.
He's like, if you who are evil know how to give good gifts to your own children, how much does your heavenly Father? So Jesus has no qualms about saying that humanity is evil.
I think what the people hear when they hear the word evil is this emotional state where the devil, the worst incarnate version of evil. I don't think they think that that they or us, because there's good in them, can't be evil as well, or do evil things, or have evil motives. And I don't think of it as so black or white in that sense, because I think we have this extreme that says I might do bad things, but I'm not evil. And the Bible doesn't have such a category where it's like, well, evil is like Hitler, and then anything less than Hitler is really...
It's not that evil.
It's not that evil. And that's not how the Bible looks at it. It looks at anything that's twisted away from the will of God as being something that brings death and destruction. And if you pursue those things, they're evil.
So, yeah, I've had to just explain this to student. I don't know if you remember we would explain this, but people would always be like, wait, you can't say it so people don't do good? And it's like, well, hold on. There's a difference between when we view somebody doing something and we go, oh, that looks good. But we also need to remember people can do good things to hide evil. Like they're, mobsters are really good at this kind of stuff. And, where they're doing this good thing over here, they have this awesome foundation, but it's really just funneling money in the background.
Now, anybody out there in the Costa Nostra, we're not speaking...
Don't
put a hit on Greg right now.
Well, just the other thing is, and I learned this from certain gangster movies, believe it or not, is we think bad guys that are quote unquote evil have pitchforks and they're walking around like they're so obviously evil. But when you're watching the movie Goodfellas, you're like, these guys are funny, they're cool, they like to dress nice. Oh, wait a minute, they're evil. You find that out slowly through the film, and you're like, that's like me. No one sits around and goes, you know what, today I think I'm evil. They think they're cool or good. And
it's like Breaking Bad, right?
Yeah,
that's what shocked people, I think, in that show is they're waiting for the redemptive arc, and it's like, no,
he's choosing this.
You just keep twisting that rope, and guess what happens? You twist in on yourself until you are evil. You were this chemistry teacher, and now you're this evil person. It's like, oh, my choices, choice after choice after choice, bit by bit, habitually pull me together until I am a knotted up evil person. And here's the problem. All humanity is knotted up in comparison to God. God's a straight, perfect, good. And we are twisted, habitual sinners. So we habitually miss what God's called us to do. And so, yes, God says we are evil. In fact, here's how Jesus puts it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. So God loves the world, right? For God did not send his son into the world to judge the world or condemn the world. You can translate it either way. But in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes him is not condemned or judged, but whoever does not believe is condemned or judged already. because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And
Christ
this
didn't
is
need
the
to come
judgment.
to judge because
Right.
we were already condemned.
Right. We're already evil. And this is the part that so many, I think, modern Christians,
Modern people.
I got to pick on us because we should
know
know
us.
better. We should know better.
Yeah.
We should know that legitimately no one is born good. No one is born untwisted. You're innocent, like you don't know you're twisted, and so you're not living out of some kind of culpability. But everybody is been condemned in sin. Like we don't have access to the garden. We don't have access to the tree of life. We're gonna die. We're stuck in sin unless Christ comes along and does his law. Gives you the Spirit of God to do what? Untwist you, to make you back into the image of God, to bring you back into that straight, perfect thing God called you to be, and that can only ultimately happen at the resurrection, but it begins internally.
Now, this happens a lot, even Christian circles. Do you think that means that there's no such good in people then at all? So they're because they're evil, there's no good.
Yeah, that's where I was going. So in the eyes of God, no. I would say that's what when we take that psalm that Paul is saying in Romans chapter 3, he's quoting all these different things. Where he says, no one is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. When you read this is God looking over the earth. And God can indeed declare, no one does good. Because no one does it perfectly for the right reason or for him. And this is the problem. You can do relative goods, what I mean by that is we can help people out and care about people, and I think those will be judged God will judge relative goods and relative evils.
Don't you who are evil give good gifts to your children?
Exactly. But when it's talking about from God's perspective, looking at our moral states, nobody does good in the sense of for the pure motivation of doing it for him. We don't do it for that reason. And so at that point, there has to be a transformation of the heart, a change away from the motivation to do it for sin to a motivation to do it for God, from a motivation to do it for another God to the motivation to do it for Yahweh. And so that's why I say, but in general, you could look at, sure, there were a lot of Baal worshipers who did good things. There are a lot of, people all over the world of all kinds of religions and viewpoints that do good things. I'm not going to say that they don't. I'm just going to say that I'm not going to judge whether or not how God's going to view that, but he indicates that when he looks at human beings as a total, we're all twisted up, and indeed, no one does good. We're all, in that sense, evil. And so that belies the question then, right? If we're supposed to hate evil, does that mean we hate people?
And I will say, you talked about this in the service, and you said we're called to love all people. People are, inherently, people are created in the image of God. We can never forget that. And so we are called to love all people. You talked about hating what is evil and what evil does. Don't hate the person because they're created in God's image. Now, there's this old adage. I mean, everybody that's been in the church, has heard this before, but, there's that old adage that says, hate the sin, love the sinner, right? And so I do want to say this, again, to the audience listening right there. A lot of times when I bring these up, these aren't my positions or things that I'm wrestling with. It is just, I'm bringing them up because I feel like it's going to bring about a good conversation. So I want to preface that.
Actually,
I'm not
he's a
hater.
Heretic, and he really is just
Exactly. But there is this idea that God hates the sin but loves the sinner. And in some instances, it can seem contrary to the scriptures, and almost like we're trying to be, PR agents for God's character. Because when you look at some of the scriptures, like Psalms 4 and 5, for you are not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness. No evil dwells with you. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all who do iniquity. You hate all who do it. Okay, and then Leviticus 20:23, and you shall not walk in the customs of the nations that I'm driving out before you, for they did all these things, and therefore I detest them. And then Malachi, chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, but you ask, how have you loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, declares the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob, and Esau I have hated. And I've turned his hill country into a wasteland and left his inheritance to the desert jackals. So, don't these passages kind of speak that God hates the sinners as much as he hates evil and wicked people? Boom chakalaka.
Do you want me to start, I guess?
Yeah, hit that concept that you were talking about with the words.
Yeah, part of this is a what I consider to be a cultural and linguistic problem with our modern Americans looking back at an ancient text. Most of what you're quoting is from the Old Testament as well. There's some New Testament scriptures that do the same thing. And it has a lot to do with the words love and hate. We live in a world that what I consider to be like severe individual introspection and personalization of everything.
And emotionalization.
Yeah, an internal emotionalization. Right. Because I think this is the concept. In the ancient world, most of their emotive expressions were external. They were connected to a communal aspect. And so the word hate and love to us means that I have this anger that builds up that I want to punch someone in the face, and it starts internally. That isn't how the ancients would have viewed that. They would have thought that as more of a spiritual problem. Maybe you're demon possessed or something's wrong with you. So a lot of times when they say love or hate, it's like it has more to do with words that we would use about favoring and disfavoring another people group. I favor my clan and my family. I look out for their interests. I don't care about the interests of others. That is their problem. They're either probably wicked, they're unsafe, so I distance myself from them. I don't support them. And it doesn't mean absolute in all areas. There might be a treaty. Well, then I favor them there, but I disfavor them in all other things. And so then when you get to passages like Esau I love and Jacob I hate, well, the Edomites were the descendants of Esau. God blessed them several times just for being close and related to Israel. And so they had different blessings. It wasn't like he just hated them all. He had this, I hate you. It's a different kind. It's more like, no, I'm going to do a special favor for this group, and I'm not going to do it for that one. And you can get into concepts of unfairness. Most of our concepts of fairness or unfairness are personalized, because I think you give different gifts to your kids at birthday parties. You don't give them all the same gift because they favor one thing that is good for them, and so a lot of these words are used differently. And so a lot of times they have to do with giving someone abundance of something and rejecting something. It didn't mean that it didn't have emotional attachments. It just means that they didn't look into a lot of these things. So when God says like the people group that chooses to operate like this, I despise that.
I keep them at arm's length.
I keep them at arm's length. In other words, I disfavor them. I favor the ones that do good to other people. I draw them close. And even farther, God even draws closer those who are being hurt by those who are disfavored. So the people who do evil, the most victimized, God calls those even closer, and he favors them even more. He loves them, he says in the text.
What makes me curious is that, the word chesed is the idea of love in a sense of a covenantal love, and that's a little stronger than your general la'av, I think, or whatever. Ahava, which is just love. And so I'm curious if there's like a sense of like, when you talk about hate, we're not opposing it to chesed, which is this, I want you to be part of my family. I want you to be here with me in this covenant love. And versus like that stuff that you're doing, I'm going to keep you at arm's length. And
you do this with your kids. Lifeguards do this. Someone's drowning and you go out to save them. The reason why they carry a buoy is you throw it out, because if they grab onto you, they will drown you and take you with them in their panic to do what they're doing. So what oftentimes lifeguards have to do is actually push people out, let them drown a bit to get them to calm down, to throw the buoy out to them. I feel that's the similar kind of picture you see in the Old Testament. If you're going to do evil, I can't hold you close. It will kill you. I have to disdain you, but those who do good, they can draw closer to me. I favor them. And that's the picture that I get of the use of the language. I know this is hard because it doesn't mean they didn't have the feelings that we currently have. It's just we don't think communally very well. Most of the words that they have for love and hate are external words. It has to do with putting someone close to you or pushing them farther away physically in the border or the boundary or distancing yourself. And it doesn't mean a permanent state often. If that person changes their ways or adopts your ways, they become family. So they would become close based on their actions. So it's not about my feelings as much.
I think in our modern language, to kind of help out, maybe it's better to think of hate and love in terms of prioritization.
Yeah.
Because like when we think about like one of the verses is like, you know, if you're going to love me, you got to hate your mother, your father, your brother, you know.
Jesus says this.
Jesus says these words. And what he's really, we always try to help explain people by going like, no, what he's saying is you have to prioritize Jesus at such a level that when family says, hey, you know, come do this thing with us, but you're like, but I got to go be with the family of God. That comes first. I got to go follow Jesus to this country and do this thing. But I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, but I'm going to give you all my stuff so that you're good, but I'm going to go to this, you know,
Your affections for them didn't change, just your loyalties did.
Right. And so when we think of love and hate in those terms, I think that it's really hard because the words are so emotive in our culture. We're so romantic.
Partially because of our Christian worldview. The ancients had to explain that, hey, it's not all external. You do have to look internal. You have to look at your heart because that's where the sin is starting. They're like, no, I'm obeying the law. I'm good. It's all external to them. Mm-hmm. So they thought they were good. And God's like, no, you're really evil. Why? Well, because he told them to examine their heart. It wasn't a concept that they wanted to look at. And through the whole Bible, the Bible is trying to teach this group of people and the whole ancient world, you do need to look at your heart. And now, because we had the benefit of that, we only look at our heart and we never actually look at like, have you ever had the Bible talks about this too, where someone is mad, but they do the right thing. And there's a parable where God says they got mad, but they went and did the other. The other one said, sure, but
the two sons, right?
And this is an idea but the other one actually did it. God has to call the praise to the one who actually did the right thing because it's not culturally common. So the idea is like for us, we would say, well, yeah, you pitched a fit, but you did the right thing. So good job. But that's because of our Christianity. That's because we've come along and examined our heart. And now we're examining our hearts apart from God. So I think we're in a different world.
It's kind of funny to think of it in those terms. Like when you think of the term Esau, I hated, right? Jacob, I loved, and Esau, I hated. If you go like, well, Jacob, I prioritized, and Esau, I deprioritized.
Yeah.
You start going like, oh, that's not so like emotional. It's sort of very functional, very like, oh, well, he just made sure he put him further down the org chart, you know, in a sense. Like, and that would be the concept of hate. Those I love, I'm going to give a promotion to that, a promotion. Those I promote and some I depromote. And it's this like, not because I'm emotional, but because...
Not because I don't love them. You see this in the very first time where someone's displeased with God, and that is after the Garden of Eden. You have Cain and Abel, and he says like, I favored your brother, but if you continue to do good, won't I favor you as well? And I think the same would have happened to Jacob and Esau and Edom. If Edom followed God would have favored them again. So these aren't absolutes for a lot of people. We say, oh, once God hates something, it's like this emotive thing that we're turning it into. He's just saying, no, I'm gonna promote this person, and it's okay to give good things to people. You don't get them just because you're you.
I find it funny, like, you know, when you think about it, we're like, how many times do people who are like, I can't believe you'd hate, and yet they're like, I hate it when that guy does that. You know,
can't believe you hate. I'm going to punch you in the face. Wait a minute, are you hating me? Like,
it's a really confusing thing because hate and love, we so just like take these giant buckets, like and we just dump anything that we're like, I dislike it, I disfavor it, I disgust it, and it's not disgust.
I think we play a lot of word games that are emotive in the world so that we can avoid examining our own motives and the motives of other people and really kind of try to come to a truth. So it's like when someone says, anyone who disagrees with me is quote unquote a hater. Well, what are you saying? Are you saying that they can't be reached anymore because their hate is so strong that all I can do to oppose them is hate them back? Or do you think they're worth redeeming? What is your goal in diminishing the idea that someone can change or have a conversation with them? So, someone is a hater. Should you punch them or should you talk to them?
Here's a critical thought, because
what's the goal?
Like, I mean, obviously then, if God can hate, it's not evil. Right? God can't do evil.
Right.
And so
by definition,
there is a hate.
If he is God.
There is a hate that is appropriate. There's actually a good a good hate. And so we want to, like, what we do is I think we literally connect hate and evil together. Like, if you hate, it's evil. But it's like, no. Hate is just
it's a visceral
an orientation of acceptance or rejection, or an orientation of drawing near. And I think that we do get close to that, like in some case where, no, you guys don't want that person in your life. You hate them.
Like, well, I don't hate them. I just dislike them a lot. We're like, well, externally, what does it look like?
Okay, so again, as we're talking about this, not prioritizing Esau and Jacob. Okay, so my dad, before he became a Christian, and we used to have these conversations, and one of the things he accused us of as Christians is the fact that we let God off the hook. Right? We make excuses for God, and we let him off the hook. And so one of the examples he gave me was when it comes to healing, right? God's people, they're suffering of illness or whatever, and the church gets around and they lay hands and they pray for this person, and then their illness goes away, and oh my gosh, look what a powerful God we serve. Wow, hallelujah, God is powerful, he healed them. Then the same scenario with somebody else, they don't get healed, and then we go, but that's God's will, God is good, God is great. He could have if he wanted to, he chose not to, that's his will, we just need to accept it. And so he's like, you're making excuses and you're letting God off the hook. So again, when it comes to these concepts, right, seems an injustice going on, right? Because like when you're looking at Esau and Jacob, they bring their offerings, Cain
and Abel do.
Cain and Abel. They bring their offerings, right? And so God says, I'm gonna look at your Esau, I'm gonna look at your offering, and wow, what a great offering it is. And Esau, I'm gonna reject your offering and off with you. And then Esau gets mad, he kills his brother, does all that stuff.
It's Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel, yeah. Sorry, I keep getting confused. So
there's a repetitive pattern of humanity.
You look at that, and in my dad's version, you let God off the hook, because God's perfect and he does everything with perfect motives, and then therefore this is right. We just maybe don't understand exactly why. Maybe he didn't try as hard, so God rejected his thing. So now you as a parent, two of my kids bring me an art project, and one of them worked really hard on it, and they're not very talented, but they worked hard on it, and I look at it and I'm giving them praise, and oh my gosh, what a beautiful gift you've given me. I'm going to hang this on the refrigerator. Now your other kid has a lot more talent, didn't put much effort in it, doesn't look that good. So you just crumple up that piece of paper and throw it away and go, I reject this gift you're giving me. You would go, wow, there's something wrong with that parent, that is so mean and cruel. But when we kind of look at that story,
depends on what culture you live in.
Yeah, it really does.
But when we look at that story from our perspective, we're kind of going, well, there was a reason, and God was right in doing that. Do we let God off the hook? I know that I'm treading heresy here.
No. I don't think that you're treading heresy.
I think people existentially feel this way. They have this idea when things don't happen for them, and they don't kind of understand why. Why would I not be able to be angry at God about it?
You can be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I've experienced similar things, but in your scenario, though, it is close to the scenario I would give. I just wouldn't give it the same way. I think there is in our culture, not in others, this need to, your kid is lazy. Mm-hmm. He brings you an art project that he barely did, but because he's talented, he's getting by on his talent. I don't think you would crumble it up and throw it away, but I do think that you can say, look, I know for you it's easy. You need to work a little harder. Your brother, it's not as good as what you're doing as far as outcomes, but he worked hard. So what am I concerned about? The morality of each of them. The outcomes may serve the community or may serve the art community or whatever, But I'm not as concerned about the art community as I am about their moral character of each of these kids. If you think skill is more important than character, then yes, you would reward them both the same or make them both feel good. But I think if you care about their character, you would point out those things. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't grow and they wouldn't grow. And I think God has an innate and instinct understanding of what we really need and what we really don't need. And he knows more than what we know and has more factors. By the sheer nature, who knows more, me or God? If God is all powerful, all loving, all knowing, are there factors that he may have that I don't have that seem disadvantaged to me, but to him are not? And this is the problem is if he is a God and he does enough good for me to see, is it possible that the things in my life might be there for a reason, or that even if I go through these bad things, he might trade up or reward me for enduring these things? And if that's a possibility, then you have to say, I think God's smarter than me. I can't figure out why he wouldn't do it, but he would know more than I would. And so who's more? Am I God or is he God? And I think you really do have to wrestle with, do you believe in a concept of a true God? And the difference between our faith and Christianity and all the other faith is this demonstrative act of dying to show you his act of love, so that you can bear the trust. And it's the act that says if a parent has always loved you and has been consistently loving, that you would yield their words when they criticize you or allow you to go through things you can't comprehend or understand. So that's how I look at the problem for me in my life and things that haven't gone my way and other people. I don't feel like God owes me stuff. And that's the problem.
You don't?
No, I think
that's what's different about you.
Yeah. The thing about it is like, to be honest, the best thing for me to endure difficulties is to understand that because of what Christ did on the cross, if he never did another thing for me, I am still blessed.
That was sufficient.
It's sufficient for me because I know he loved me, he did it, and it's that one act of love that allows me to endure a million acts of unkindness that seem to be perceived slights or disfavors. Because he favored me greatly, the disfavor or the favor of other people is up to him. But I know in the end, he will trade up because I've seen his character. So it's actually a trust that's built over the act. I don't think you have that in other religions. I don't think you have that act. Without that act, it's a cold, nebulous, unfeeling God that doesn't feel a need to demonstrate any act of love. And how can anyone trust that? So,
with the Cain and Abel stuff, honestly, I think the times that we have a tendency to sound like we're God's PR agents is probably when we're pandering. We're trying desperately to figure something out in our cultural perspective that is radically different from the culture it was written in. I think most of the time we just want it to be easy and make sense. And when it's not easy, we go
painful, actually.
Well, no, what I mean by easy is like, it should just be clear. Shouldn't it just be clear?
Yeah.
And we ignore the gap of human time and cultural differences and language difference, all the stuff. And it's not impossible to overcome those, but it takes work, and sometimes we don't always see it. And I think the pandering feeling can be these, like, what I call a trite, or I don't always a
trite answer.
It's a trite apologetic. What I mean by that is like, well, It's kind of like almost a ready-made answer that does. You're like, but that's not satisfying. That doesn't really fit. But I think the part then again is where we can understand is like, well, how did the ancients view the Cain and Abel story, right? And then here we got to go to Hebrews, and in Hebrews it says, by faith we understand that the worlds were set in order at God's command, and it goes on verse 5 or 4. By faith Abel offered God a greater sacrifice than Cain, and through his faith he was commended as righteous because God commended him for his offerings, and through his faith he still speaks though he is dead. Now, my thing there is like, okay, so he saw his faith. What is he saying? Like, and so again, here's a language thing. So it's because he believed in God? No, I think that what it's saying here is that it's by his fidelity to God. So Abel brought his offering out of a trusted fidelity. Cain didn't. And so it's not a picture of your kids just giving you an art project. It's one kid giving you an art project, trusting you're going to put it on the refrigerator, and the other kid walking up to you going, here, stupid family, and walking away. You'd be like, what is wrong with you? This isn't a picture.
When you give your 13-year-old an assignment,
well,
he's like,
well, what do you do with that?
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, what do you do with it when you have a child who hates you? And that art project was like that he gives you is actually a sign of his hatred, of his, or even worse, his indifference of you. And that's really what Cain was doing. Cain brought it so that when he's asked later to do something about it, if you bring it to me, won't you? No, I don't trust you. That's what Cain reveals. I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't want to be with you. Oh no, you're gonna curse me. I'm gonna die. Cain was all about Cain, and so that's how I see it. And
sure.
I just I take a little bit of like. A little put off by your little illustration there.
No, the other thing though is I just think that when something good happens to someone, we automatically assume it's because they earned some moral favor. I think sometimes just having something happen good for someone is okay, even if I don't get it. Right. Like if someone is going to hell and God gives them something good to try and get their attention, should I be like, I didn't get that thing and you love me? It's just like, I don't know why he gave it to them. I can't comprehend why, but I think he's fair enough. I've seen enough fairness. Also, just in a family, if it would be different if you always favored, no matter what the person did, one kid over another. But I think that at different times you get gives different things for your kids, different gifts, different rewards, and it doesn't have to have like a particular reason. Like I can't just be kind to someone, and that has a lot to do with my own sense of, and I say this for myself, as a sense of entitlement. I have to convince myself or talk to myself, I don't deserve everything I think I should have. Like, I think it's just weird that I have this concept that I need to have it now, or that I get everything now.
So going back to God as us as God's PR people, right? I think that also belies two sides, right? I think on one side, sometimes Christians, we feel insecure. And so we're like, oh my gosh, you're right, like, because you actually sadly don't realize that you agree with the objector's objection. So like,
you don't feel like you can entertain it?
We see here that's like, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. So not only does he hate these things, they're disgusting to him. The word abomination actually is one that kind of means loathes. It has that sense of disgust to it. Because it's just repulsive. And so, he says, haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. Usually, most people think I'm going to read the Leviticus verse where he's talking about same-sex sex. And but abomination, God hates things, and God actually is disgusted by things, or is loathes certain things. And so I say that, and somebody goes, "Oh my gosh, your God's so hateful," and all this, right? And we go, and suddenly we feel insecure. It's like, oh my gosh, if I don't be God's PR guy, you're not going to believe. Well, my heartbeat is to want to defend God because I love him. I don't have the problem that God hates. God's God. God can explain it. God will explain it. God, I don't have to explain it. God's the one who said he did it. You ask God. Talk to him. And I think this is the hard part, is that we don't want to point out to that person like, wow, well, who died made you God over God. Like, you have the capacity and the ability to actually judge him? Like, that seems pretty arrogant and haughty. Wait a minute. Like, we put ourselves in the seat of God, and that's the very problem. You're just proving the Bible's point that we think we should be God, and we have every right to look, oh, God hates? How could he hate? That's just... And I'm like, oh. And I get caught in that. Like, you want to defend him. You want to be like, no. It's like, well, no, God's God, and he's not afraid to say that he hates, and he's not afraid to say that he has things that are an abomination to him. He's got these things. I'm uncomfortable because I still have a proclivity to want to please humanity and defend God because I love God. I want him to look good to everybody, but God's like, you just let me be. It's sort of like C.S. Lewis said, how do you defend the truth? Sort of like the way you defend a lion.
Let him out of the cage.
Just open the cage.
And I would say too, I'm comfortable with God for in pretty much in everything. when in situations like that arise with discussing with other people, I'm not uncomfortable with God. I'm uncomfortable that you're uncomfortable.
Right. That's I guess what I'm saying too.
And one of the things that that your wife told me, we were at Bible study at your house like probably 15 years ago or more. You know, it was when you lived in California Meadows. So, we were talking about something, you know, and not necessarily understanding why God does things or chooses to heal or not to heal, or, you know, all of these different things, you know, and just the discomfort of not knowing why, you know. And so Teresa said, she goes, so what would your decision be? You know, what would your decision be in that case? Okay, but I also want to preface it with this. What would your decision be if you had the full knowledge of God? And right then, it was just like, well, then I would make that decision. You know? I mean, obviously, I would make that decision that God made. So that's where I kind of went, okay, even in those areas that I'm uncomfortable, I'm comfortable because I do understand I don't have God's knowledge. You know, I just have this limited knowledge of what I would do, and not necessarily. And I've made some great decisions in my life that turned out pretty poorly. So obviously, you know, I don't have all of the facts and all of the knowledge. So
yeah, for me,
contrary to what Nancy thinks.
Nancy, don't listen to this part. I am not admitting that I've ever made a wrong decision.
I guess I don't have problems with God hating things. I think it's when it comes to people that would be more of a difficulty for me. I think most of us hate things. Especially if it's even in matters of tastes, people are like, I hate this string cheese or whatever. It's like a detestable thing to you. But I think it's harder for them to think that God would hate them or be angry at them, because isn't he supposed to be love? And I think that's the objectionable aspect to thinking that I think people wrestle between wanting to be lovable and knowing that there's evil inside of them. So there's this war inside of a person that goes, well, I got to be good because I'm not as bad as Hitler. So there's this internal kind of existential, like, well, if God's love, wouldn't he love the good that's in me? And am I not good enough for him?
But his beloved son is perfect. Like it goes back to Brent. You said you say this a lot when you preach in different times. Just like we underestimate how evil sin is.
How evil is.
So, I think that if you want to wax eloquent on that, that's like, to me, what you're describing is we go, I want to be loved. I don't want to be hated.
Part of that idea is, I think, and I'll just use sex as a topic on that, right? I think that people don't realize how evil using sex outside of the container that God placed it in can be, right? And people just kind of go, okay, well, I slept with this person and we didn't get pregnant, so no harm, no foul, nobody was hurt. But really, every time that you attach yourself to somebody, there is something given and something taken away that you can never get back, and so it's just a series. And I mean, you've seen it where, people lose self-esteem, in the process of that, and they've given themselves to so many people, they no longer feel that they have any worth. They feel like this is the only thing I have to offer a person, is my, my beauty and
body
and my availability. And then when your beauty goes, you have nothing, or, and just the abuse cycle that goes on. And if you were one of those people that played the field, at some point, you're probably going to see, once you get to heaven, because you've repented from all this, the damage that you really caused people in their life from a self-esteem standpoint and from a from many other ones. But also, that sex part too, outside of that container. We wouldn't have abortion. We wouldn't necessarily have any STDs. We wouldn't have these things that are just killing our culture and everything else. And so you might look at that sin and go, no, there was no pregnancy, so no harm, no foul. No, that is just one domino in a series of things just like when you throw that pebble into the water, and the ripple effects are great. So that's what I have to say about.
So in the ancient world, the worst sins are idolatry, putting another god before God, and in our world, that idolatry takes on the form of putting myself before God. If you do live for yourself and not for the way that God designed you to be, then you are saying I'm more important than whatever God decides for me to do. And you could do good things to other people, but you're doing them in your own name. You're not doing them in his name. And I think that's the big lie, is that God sees that you could be what you could be if you served him. And in that, there's something to value. He can take what you are and make it, and he died for it to him and has value. And so in that, you can look to him. But by saying you have to submit in order to see that value be manifested in your life. And so I think that's the importance, is that God sees what you could be, but he's not going to pretend like he doesn't see what you are. And I think that's hard because it feels naked. You feel naked before God. Like, he knows what I really am like, and I can't hide from him. I can hide from everyone else, and it seems to serve my purposes. But before an all-knowing God, there's nothing to hide. And he says, come to me, and you're like, no. Again, that's a willful act that we all choose to make. And that's because we want to be on the throne. And I think that's what's the hard part is you have to trust that you don't know yourself as much as you think you do, that God actually knows you better and knows what you could be and died for you to come to him to fulfill that potential. So that's how you get true self-esteem, if you're looking for it.
So you guys have any more to say, or you want to move on to the questions?
I just hate this conversation.
We think about hate a lot. I think the one thing, though, is that we did talk about this conversation about hate. Hate is such a big, giant topic that if maybe we didn't hit something that you were wanting more specificity, because for you're more concerned about LGBTQ hate, or maybe you're concerned about racial hate, or just you hate your neighbor up the street,
or hate bad jokes,
or send in a question that we could answer. I hate hate so much. I hate people who hate.
I hate hate so much. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. Wait.
So send that question in, because I think that will get more clarity, because it is such a nebulous topic.
Oh, wait, we do have a question like that.
We do.
Ooh, we got a question.
So Debbie wrote in a question, and she says she's asking Greg, how does your message on Sunday differ when speaking to a non-believer who is making choices that would be considered bad for them, also known as evil? After service, I was having a discussion with a member who shared that in the case of an unbeliever, your only mission is to share Jesus, or share the gospel, I would imagine. Was your whole message primarily for a believer dealing with another believer? Also, Focus on the Family has a great video called How Jesus Redeemed My Gender Confusion. Really helps you understand the struggle. Thanks, guys, especially Brent, for all you do to keep us thinking and laughing and sleeping. You're welcome, Debbie. You're welcome.
Are you doing all those at one time?
She's just
laughing and sleeping.
I saw her in the hallway, and she was laughing about. I was talking about my low self-esteem, so I think she's trying to boost my self-esteem.
Wow.
And you know what? Not very many people do it as well as Debbie. She is good. She is an encourager.
So I think for the sake of Debbie's friend, I think the problem is that I was writing this for the idea of how we deal with those who are not Christians. And because I was talking to the non-Christian who would make the assumption that we're all about hate, right? In fact, I would tell you if this was a message about Christians, this would include a warning that this is evil and that you should repent, or church discipline would incur. In fact, the Bible has a lot more to say about actually removing from you and avoiding people in the church that continue in a sin that they are unwilling to repent of. I mean, Paul even says you don't even eat with somebody like that. And then he quickly goes, I told you guys, remove yourselves from those who are sexually immoral and all these different things. He says, but I didn't say remove yourself from those in the world that are that way, because then you'd have to leave the world. And so he's very clear, no, you don't. This is not about internal. This is what I was trying to explain was trying to help people see that their hate that they think Christians have and that they actually have is because everybody has a tendency to, quote unquote, hate evil. But if you don't know what evil is, you're going to end up on the wrong side. So I was just kind of helping challenge them, saying like, yeah, we all agree we want a world without evil. Yeah, we all agree, without hate. And yes, we all agree that we hate what's bad, that what we don't like. What we don't like in people, we don't like, you even have a tendency then to hate people that you don't like or doing things you don't like. That's why I use the Nazi illustration.
Yeah, it's kind of like the C.S. Lewis thing where he says, like, who told you that it was evil? How do you know that it's bad? Who told you that if you don't believe in a God, you're not a believer? Where does your source of good or bad come from?
Right.
I think that's what you were getting at.
When we get to the
Why
idea
do you have
that
that sense that there's something's bad?
Like, by all means, you shouldn't use hateful language when addressing and befriending and being around people who are, whether they're LGBTQ, whether they're just shady business dudes, or whether they're mobsters. I'm really, really pushing the mobster thing this week. I'm just kidding. Whatever it is, you're going to be around people in this world. Now, my thing is that don't view people according to their sins. View them as people, as humans who are sinful, right? We're all sinners. This isn't like they're a special breed of sin and they're a special breed of sin and they're a special... No, nobody's special breed of nothing. Like, we're all messed up sinners. So I'm trying to level...
We're all not just dealing with one sin.
Right.
But also
in fact, most people who've come from the LGBTQ world into Christianity and repented first of all kinds of other sins before they ever realized, you know what? Oh, well, this is all connected for me.
And I will say, talking to a lot of Christians, in the church, a lot of times, they're sitting listening to sermons about sin, about sin, and they're living together. And it never really convicts them that, oh my gosh, we're not married, we're living together and we're having sex, and that's a sin. So, sometimes, God's going to hit you where you're at and just deal with things at different times.
And that's my point. This is a very general sermon because I was trying to apply it to basically anybody. Christians, oftentimes, like in those cases, they're apathetic to their sin,
right?
Because it's personal. All evil, all sin, all the things that are bad in this world are personal. And so it's hard when you have somebody you love and you care about and you hang out with, and they do something evil, and you're like, I have to confront that. I don't care what the evil is. That's not easy. And if you have to confront it, whether it's somebody who is giving in to their sexual proclivities or whatever, it is not easy to confront. I know you've had to, Stephen, do this a few times in your ministry career and stuff. And
I think it goes back to the idea of when you're talking about in your sermon about what kind of relationship do I have. First off, if it's criminal, then you would do it because you want to be a good citizen.
Right.
You care. So there are things that you see that are clearly evil that you need to draw attention to. Because that's the most loving thing to do. And I still kind of preach this over and over again. We have this concept that if I'm doing good to someone who's doing evil is by tolerating their evil, like allowing the evil to continue and then pretending like it's really not that bad. That's a weird...
That's actually apathy. That's what I'm saying.
It's either I either care more about my own feelings, or I hate confrontation, or I hate any kind of negativity. I want to be at peace because you think the absence of conflict is peace. But if you really love someone, you will risk the relationship because it might help them in the long run. And so some people have had to lose the friendship or lose the relationship, but it healed that other person. And if you really love someone, you'd be willing to do that for them. It's actually a greater act of love. You're supposed to do it in love, to tell somebody something that you know they need to hear, but it's difficult for you. And you sacrifice your own feelings to bring about peace between them and God and community.
When it comes to the case of LGBTQ people, I'm talking the hardest thing is you may befriend somebody and be really good friends with them, and the bottom line is at some point as a Christian it's gonna come up probably earlier than later in our current culture, and so you kind of go like, well, this is what I believe, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be your friend. That's critical. And I don't know why we get into this well, I think what you're doing, I think that this behavior is a sin. I think some of my behaviors are sin, and I don't not want to be with
this goes both ways, right? If you think anyone who goes to church just blatantly hates homosexuals to the point where they want to harm them, do you know that to be true? Is that really how you've been and exposed to Christians as exactly what you've heard? Some of you may have been, and I would say that was sin for the Christian. But the idea that somehow everyone has to agree with everything that I do, like I have friends that do all kinds of things that I disagree with passionately, but it doesn't mean that I hate them. And I don't know anyone who makes that kind of acceptance of any kind of situation in their life where you see something incredibly harmful, but you let it go and you never address it, you never talk about it. I don't know how loving that is. I think it's more about my feelings at that point if I do something like that for someone. I think if you really love someone, you want a true and honest relationship, you have to discuss the differences that you have and the disagreements that you have because you think it's worthy of being a discussion because you really do believe it.
Yeah, and so the hardest ones that I've talked to are those who have children who have come out of the closet and the parent is lost. They're like, I don't know what to do. Do I kick it? Do I kick them out of my house? Do I do this? And my point to them was basically like, no, listen. And I love, this is a Tim Keller concept, and I brought him up now twice because I've been reading his books lately. But the he makes a really good point that he talks about this lady who would call on her father, and her father would just start getting mad and yelling and screaming and cussing at her, and she'd say, I'm sorry, Dad, but when you talk to me like that, I'm going to hang up on you. Well, and so she just hung up. Well, she calls him the next day. Why are you calling me? Well, I told you I love you. I want to talk to you. Oh, how do you mean? Well, Dad, I told you if you're going to yell at me, I'm going to hang up. She hung up, and then called the next day. And the point was that eventually he repented of his anger, and he's like, I'm sorry I keep doing this. Like, I know you keep asking me not to, and I keep doing it, but you love me. And that's the point.
Right.
That you don't stop the relationship just because you're asking for a boundary. A lot of people aren't comfortable enough to draw a boundary and still build the relationship. And so when it comes to like children, it may be that you're saying, listen, yeah, we don't agree with these behaviors. We don't even view them as identities. Like, we don't. As Christians, I don't think we should view them as identities. That's a construct built from Freud and Kinsey and some different groups, not from the Bible. And so I want to go where Jesus' concepts are going, not other concepts. And I think that's why we get a little confused in our cultures, because we picked up these concepts of identity that aren't biblical. Instead of just seeing your child as somebody who is wrestling with a behavior and they want to give into a temptation, they want to then name themselves after that temptation, you kind of just go like, well, actually, I love you, and while this behavior I hope that you don't participate further into, just know that I love you. Like, and if they keep going, some questions came up like, well, what do I do if they start dating? I said, well, you have every right to care about your child. But my younger kids, well, you have every right to draw the boundary of your house and then go, well, yeah, let's go to dinner. We'll go to this restaurant, and you don't have to have your kids come. Or where do they want to stay? Well, you have the right to say you can stay. You can stay in the house, but as long as my kids are here. But then there's an education process. You don't expose. You have the rights to draw the boundaries, but keep the relationship. And so this is what's really hard for people. And they think boundaries are hate. Boundaries are not hate. Boundaries are just... Everybody has to draw boundaries. It's just where you and what your values and things end and the other person begins. And it's okay. And we have to be okay that doesn't mean we hate. In fact, boundaries are the one of the most essential aspects of a good, healthy love. Otherwise, you're telling you need to be codependent. And that's dangerous. That's not good.
Yeah, and part of that question too is, they said that the case of the unbeliever, our only mission is to share Jesus. I would look at that as sharing the gospel. And the gospel, does include, sin and redemption and the good news. But I would say I agree with that statement in the sense that you don't go and attack their sin as much as you present the good news.
Right.
We're all sinful. And so, just running around pointing out people's sin is going to probably turn them off to hearing the gospel and not receive it. But I will say, each case is different. So there's not like, okay, don't ever talk about somebody's sin, because sometimes that may be where the Holy Spirit is working. And so I just say, be careful, be considerate, be compassionate, care about them, and bring the good news. And again, just as we're dealing with things in our lives as Christians, sometimes it gets exhausting because you're always battling some sin in your life, whether it's manifested in action or maybe it's just attitudes or whatnot. But as Christians, there should be something, and we should know what that something is that we're fighting against, that we're working with.
Often some things, but often there are more than one.
Yeah, often there's more than one, and if you're like, well, I'm a Christian, I'm not struggling with anything, then, you're probably not evaluating yourself very well, because I am sure if I spent an hour with you, I could find a couple of things for you to work on.
You're so judgmental.
I'm joking. But again, ask yourself, what sins am I currently wrestling and struggling with to eradicate from my life? And on the other side of it, what sins are you aware of in your life that you're not fighting, that you have just gotten comfortable with in your life? And I would just warn you there to not get comfortable with sin in your life. And
Debbie, if you or anybody listening with a similar kind of question, if you want really further understanding of how it differs between when you're dealing with somebody who's not a Christian and somebody who is a Christian, and the questions of same-sex attraction or gender confusion, these kinds of things, I really recommend the book Holy Sexuality by Christopher Yuan. He's got actually it's for high schoolers, but it's a 12-part 14-part like video curriculum that's for $20 on his and the book is the same.
It's on audio now, I think, as well.
So there's a lot of that's an excellent resource. And once you go into that zone, you're gonna find a lot of Christians who have come from the LGBTQ world, and there's some debates and stuff on how we should define all those things. But then the majority of them all are just in love with Jesus, and their testimonies are powerful, and so it can really help us continue to kind of see like where to go wrong and where do we do it right. And we're gonna make mistakes, and it's hard. It's a difficult conversation.
And one last question, and I think this could be pretty brief if we know the answer, but this comes from Debbie as well. I was talking to her, and she was talking about, she was reading through the books of Kings and Chronicles, and it says in those books, for more information, because it's talking about the kings, if for more information, read it in the annals of the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. So where would we find these writings? Are they familiar? Are either of you familiar with them? Is there, can you go to some annals and writings of antiquity?
They're in your appendix. No, I'm just kidding. They're not.
To the Lord of the Rings. They're in the back of the Lord of the Rings.
There you go.
No, you made a shoot for this one?
I mean...
And then you tell me if I hit it wrong or not. So what you're usually talking about is from several different sections from Kings and Chronicles, where it's mentioned these annuals of the kings of Israel and the annuals of the kings of the
annuals or annals?
Annals, sorry, okay. Annals. Chronicles of the Kings of Israel or Annals of the Kings of Israel. And so there it'll say, haven't the rest of the story been said in these books? And so what you find is that there's also one outside of that just mentions the Annals of the Kings of the Medes and the Persians as well. A lot of people have different theories on what this is about. That most kingships kept records of their kings pretty thoroughly, and the people writing scripture at the time were using these annals to kind of put together the stories for scriptures. The ones that are mentioned here, most people think either were already used to adapt in Chronicles and Kings, but also one of the theories is that we don't have them anymore. These are basically footnotes for people who were originally reading the books to know that some of these sources where they got them from are around today. So go verify what I'm saying here, that this is just as accurate as in this
where kings were overthrown, they threw the books out too?
Well, some of those books, they're no longer scripture. So a lot of people think because a book is referenced in the Bible that somehow that might be some kind of missed canon or something. And I don't find that to be the case, because we wouldn't want to include the Medes and Persians' views of kings in the Bible. But so it's just kind of an ancient way of putting a footnote in a Bible to reference some other material to kind of affirm what's been said in this particular passage.
I think they also just want to note that those books, they are definitely lost. We don't have
Yeah,
them.
we're hoping
And
maybe someday to find them.
Many people actually believe, I think from what I understand, scholars would actually argue that these are probably more the secular accounts.
Yeah,
So you'd be
typically
reading
they are.
about like the actual events from the perspective of the king. But what you have in the Bible are God's accounts of what's going on. I mean, you got to remember that when we read what God's saying he's doing, he's letting people know this is what I was doing in that war. And the war itself happens, and you would have been there, and in some cases you wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, God won this war. You'd been like, oh, we won. And along comes the prophet who's like, no, God won you that war. He said so last, all these kinds of things. The other fun thing is that to note that we probably won't find these books. I mean, when you know what's happened to Jerusalem after Babylon, and they're just the absolute destruction that had happened to Jerusalem, they're gone. They were burned up. They were destroyed. If they even survived then, they did not survive the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. There's just that place has been burnt down and destroyed so many times. We don't find large pots of papyri and stuff like that in the place. We get like a signet ring, and we get like an engraved wall or something. But a book from that time period.
There's a lot of the writings from
It's
the
not gonna
ancient
be there.
world that we have are like not even a tenth of what was probably said, written, or understood at the time.
Yeah, if they were there, they may have been whisked off to Alexandria and then burned in the library when the Library of Alexandria is burned. I mean, unfortunately, what we do have when we find things, when you find papyri, the oldest papyri you're really going to find that's really around are like the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? That's kind of the oldest papyri that we get. These, and we're not find. If you find older stuff, it's typically clay tablets, something that's written in some kind of metal, or it's on a wall and it's in some sarcophagus somewhere and inscribed in hieroglyphics. And so, you're not typically finding books, annals, which we shouldn't call them books. We should call them scrolls.
Yeah,
scrolls that would have these kinds of long listed information.
And each of the ancient world, this is a common phrase too. And
and you're not. But the last thing is you're not going to typically. You're going to take one copy of those and you're going to keep it. If religious material gets copied and gets read and gets passed on, your annals of your latest this is like saying, hey, go check out that old newspaper article back there. And like, we microfiche things and do stuff, but I mean, people don't even realize we've lost whole movies, right?
Movies, yeah. In the
because
1920s and 30s, we didn't preserve films, so there are whole movies of famous artists. Lon Chaney Sr., he's the man of 1,000 faces, but I think we have like maybe 5 of the movies that he did.
So, I mean, even
They're
in
gone to history.
Yeah. So in those, you think about those cases, and that's film, how much more
less the ancient papyri.
Ancient papyri. So, yeah.
This is a fascinating question. If you're interested about some of these things, you get a good study Bible, it'll point you to these because there's a couple references to books outside of the Bible that are really good to know.
All right. Well, we've pretty much run all over the the rabbit trail. It's just been I've really hated it, guys. I'm glad that you hated it too. And
But if I love to hate it?
Did you love to hate it? I hate to love it.
Hate to love it?
Wait. I don't know.
All right, hate and love on my hand.
You know what I really hate?
Like in prison.
Is how Brent's going to end this. I'm just kidding. Actually, we're really glad that you guys joined us, and we're glad you have been on this journey. It's not a comfortable one all the time, but we hope that you learned something, and maybe we opened some doors for you for some more questions. If that's your case, then let us know at rabbittrail@obcc.church. That's rabbittrail@obcc.church. We're glad you joined us. May God bless you guys, and may you have a great rest of your week.
Boom, chakalaka.
Bye.